Novel Navigator. Chapter 151, A Cruel Test. Is something wrong? Argus asked, seeing Adam so stunned, but thought it was just because the news about innate skill was so unexpected. Ah, yes. Adam nodded and turned to him. Right, about the promotion test. We've seen enough. Argus said. You passed. Adam nodded with relief. Give me your mercenary card. Albertson said, offering his hand. Adam took out his mercenary card. It was small and simple looking. Then he handed it over to him. Albertson took the card and then took out a strange item from his inventory. It looked like a small version of the printing machine. It was hand-sized with a crank on one side. With the card in hand, he inserted it inside the strange item and turned the crank. It hummed for a couple of seconds and then stopped. Albertson took the card out of the machine and handed it back to Adam. There you go. Adam looked at the card with a slight smile. Name, Adam Palestar. Level, 4. Affiliation, Crimson Hound Mercenaries. Recruit, S. Rank, Order Giver. You defeated Beyonder, but your physical attributes are not enough to reach that rank yet. I apologize for that. Argus said. I understand. Adam said and put the card back inside his inventory. The card's picture of him also had changed. It wasn't much, but in the couple of months, his hair had greatly grown out. There wasn't much with his physical descriptions, except his skin looked slightly fairer than before, but it wasn't anything drastic. I suppose I haven't been able to grow muscle much. Adam looked at his arms and sighed. He wanted to put more effort into that, but he was just too busy, as he didn't want to lack on his training. While it helped to have a strong body with muscles, currently the skills, 3 powers, and level increasing had greater effects on his overall strength. With that, you may leave. Argus said and offered a handshake. It was a pleasure to see you in flesh. Adam nodded and shook the hand. You may follow me. Albertson led Adam out of the room and down the long corridor. Argus stayed behind, lost in thought. Only those with God-given talent can receive innate skills. I underestimated him greatly, how foolish of me. I even have a feeling that he didn't show me everything he is capable of. Now I am excited to see what kind of person he can become. While walking down the corridor, Adam asked. Is Digby done yet? No, he is at his final test. Albertson said and looked at him. Do you want to watch? Sure. Adam nodded. After taking the corridor, they headed to another hidden room that was currently empty with a large window overseeing a surprisingly different kind of testing room. It had an open ceiling with a blue sky and scorching hot sun shining down. Its walls were white, and the floor was raised like a platform. Rah! A crying shout came from the room. Albertson and Adam stopped by the window and looked down into the room. There, they saw Digby, kneeling with blood pooling around him as he tried to stand and move further. Behind him, there was a white flag waving in the air, and at the other side of the platform, there was a black and white flag, as if it were a finishing line. What's this? Adam asked. He had never tried to do the Royal Prince test or haven't even watched anyone do it. A test of willpower, Albertson said. Digby has to walk from the white flag to the other end of the platform. If he makes it within the time limit, he'll be Royal Prince. Adam looked at the wall where there was a clock ticking down the seconds. Only 1 minute remained. Digby has failed this particular test 3 times already, Albertson said with a sigh. I don't know what's with his mental state. He is clearly strong enough, even though he is lacking the level barely, but that doesn't matter, as long as he manages to walk through the platform. Digby tried to stand up, crying and shouting, but his body was not listening to him. It almost felt like he was fighting against gravity. His knee was strongly planted on the ground, and his body weighted like an enormous mountain pressing down on him. Another failure, it seems. Albertson said with a sigh. This might be his last chance. He is already, 43 years old. That's right. Adam sighed. It was frustrating to see someone struggle to walk a distance of 5 meters. That's all it was. The platform was only 5 meters long. Digby managed to walk a mere 1 meter in the past half an hour. It was all he managed to accomplish. It was even frustrating to him because he reached 2 meters a year ago. It meant that his willpower had decreased. I am so weak. Digby gritted his teeth. I want this. I want this, so why can't I reach it? At this moment, he remembered himself as a kid, a time of innocence and boundless energy. He remembered watching some old animated shows. In those, the protagonist always received a strange power at the moment when they were in their darkest hour. As a kid, it was like the coolest thing ever. Digby gritted his teeth, imagined himself as one of those protagonists and pushed himself. One last time. His knees shook and rose off the ground, a pain raging in his eyes, but he didn't stop. Ding, ding. At that moment, a sound that he had learned to hate the most echoed in his ears. Zzz. A static voice said, "You're out of time, Digby. You've failed the promotion test, you may leave the way you came." Digby's knees crashed back on the ground, a despair flashing through his eyes. Again, he failed. In the hidden room, Adam averted his gaze with a deep sigh. What an evil test, Albertson said. It makes the person feel completely hopeless. Yeah, it truly is. Adam said and then sighed before bowing as farewell. I'll be leaving now, thank you. Take care. Albertson said, still looking towards the platform, where Digby was kneeling in defeat with tears running down his cheeks. Since the test of willpower had ended, the strange power that stopped Digby from moving had also disappeared. However, still, he was kneeling as if he were frozen like a statue. Truly a cruel test. The sun reached the highest peak in the sky. At the yard of the promotion test compound, carriages started departing. Some were thrilled after getting promoted, some looked disheartened, and some were outright crying, while others were stoic and silent, their emotions hidden beneath a mask of indifference. Adam was sitting inside his carriage, hiding from the warmth of the sun. Thankfully, the interior of the carriage was somewhat cool and shaded. At that moment, the door opened, and a wave of heat entered the carriage for a brief moment. Then a figure stepped inside and sat down. Digby looked normal with a mask of indifference. His eyes weren't red either, as if he hadn't just cried, and his breathing was steady. Adam side-eyed at him, not daring to speak a word. How did it go? Digby asked. I passed the test. Good. Digby smiled. I knew you could do it. Adam nodded, not daring to ask about his success because he already knew. He had seen people like him before. At his current state, Digby most likely preferred to stay quiet for the rest of the day. Ding, ding. Adam flinched in surprise and looked ahead at strange messages that appeared in front of his eyes. It's done. 99%. 100%. Transformation complete. Chapter 152, Alone? Transformation complete. Skill, the little god. Rank, innate. First power, physical movement enhancement. Second power, illusion creation. Third power. Fourth power. Fifth power. Side effect, devourment. Description, the first mystery has been unraveled, 3 remain. What in the world? Adam looked at the interface in front of him and wondered what the next powers would be. He had never thought about the possibility that he had more than just physical enhancement and illusion creation. It was because he had these 2 powers since the beginning, and he thought that's it. The name of the skill changed slightly. It now has the on it, I wonder if that means anything. Adam then saw the side effect and remembered something dire. He had been trying to stop the devourment from happening this time around but couldn't hold it in anymore. His sleeve, around his left arm, turned into the jaws of a shark and clamped down on his wrist. A terrible pain shot out throughout his arm as the shark sleeve ate his hand. Blood began pouring out, but Adam quickly took out the flask of the setting sun, which he purchased before leaving the Dawn Watch for the promotion test. The flask immediately helped and recovered his missing hand. The shark's jaws disappeared from his sleeve, returning the sleeve to its previous state except it was slightly bloody around the cuff. Adam took a deep breath and looked over to Digby. He had been looking outside the window since they left the test compound, watching as the beautiful streets of Imperium City went by. Adam waved off the interface and thought. 3 mysteries remain, hey. Sure is a lot to unravel. Inside an attic-looking room with a low ceiling with a light bulb hanging in the center, a beautiful woman kneeled in front of a large bookshelf filled with dusty old tomes. At that moment, the hatch of the attic opened up and a black-clad person entered, looking like he had just stepped out of the shadows. "Madam Yu," he said and nodded. "I bring news." "Yes." Lady Yu opened her pearly eyes and waited for the man to speak. "The man you asked us to tail, Adam Palestar, has completed his promotion test successfully. He is now order giver, and he is on his way back to Dawn Watch." Lady Yu smiled and asked. "Did anyone see you?" "No," the man shook his head. "We couldn't enter the test compound without being seen, so we didn't. There was a powerful man inside who would have noticed us." "Oh, any idea who?" she curiously asked. "Grand Lord, probably someone from the Mercenary Guild." "Well, he is S-ranker, so I am not surprised that a higher-up from that guild came to see him." Lady Yu said and rose to her feet, looking like she was slightly floating above the ground as the dress billowed around her in the gentle breeze. "Should we keep tailing him?" the man asked, talking about Adam. "Yup, keep following him for now," she replied with a smile and turned around to the man. The man's cheeks flushed slightly. He had been training in the shadows for a long time to become a powerful assassin. He had trained his emotions and reactions to be completely controlled, but her presence always seemed to throw him off balance. A few years ago, he was given a mission to assassinate her. He thought it was going to be easy, but when he finally saw her, he couldn't do it. Eventually, he joined forces with her, and he returned to his client, who ordered the assassination, and killed her instead. The client was just some jealous concubine of the King Moriarty. She thought she would be able to do it without any consequences because she was close to the king, but she was severely mistaken. After she was killed, the king didn't move a finger to avenge her. By the way, I am not sure if this is important, but Adam brought someone to the guild. "Oh, who?" Lady Yu asked with a raised eyebrow. "A young woman named Amelia. She is from Moonlit Guard." Before he could finish, he was frozen like a statue as he saw Lady Yu's expression. Her beautiful, gentle face was now twisted in anger. She was trembling with rage with her nails digging into her palms so tightly that they left deep marks. Madam Yu." The man's voice quivered in shock. He had never seen her so furious before. To this day, he was unsure whether she was capable of even feeling anger, as she seemed to. Holy and pure to ever experience such a base emotion. "Who?" Lady Yu took a deep breath and forced a shaky smile. "Kyle." "Why yes." Kyle whimpered back a response. "I have a mission for you of the highest importance," she said, her voice quivering with uncharacteristic seriousness. "I am yours to command." Kyle fell on his knees and lowered his head. "Kill that bissy that woman, all right." My lady," Kyle said in shock. She had never ordered him to do any assassinations, thus, he started to think that life was behind him. Lady Yu turned to him with an innocent look. "Is something wrong?" is that wisest thing to do? Kyle asked. It's no gain, high-risk situation. Explain. If I assassinate her successfully, she will just respawn and return to that guild. From what I've gathered, she is merely an order giver. It's also not a place where I can just enter freely. Digby, if you haven't heard, is rather powerful. Then don't get caught. Lady Yu said and smiled. Simple as that. I have no doubt you can handle it. Sigh. Kyle nodded. In truth, he wasn't too troubled with the request, as he believed he could do it easily and without being seen. However, he didn't want Lady Yu to do something she would regret afterwards. I expect it to be done swiftly. Lady Yu said, her eyes narrowing in a way that made Kyle shiver. What's up with her? This is not Lady Yu I know. Kyle gulped, nodded, and then left the attic to do his preparations for the mission. Lady Yu loosened her clenched hands and looked at her palms, which were bleeding slightly. She took out a napkin and wiped the blood away, then she sat down in front of a knee-high table with a candle at the center. After taking out a matchstick, she scratched it against the side of the box and lit the candle. Its yellow flame flickered side to side, casting dancing shadows on the walls. She then placed her hands around the flame and took a deep breath, closing her eyes as she whispered a silent prayer. The small wounds on her hands healed with visible speed, leaving nothing behind but smooth, unblemished skin. She opened her eyes, and her pink lips curled into a sad look. No, no, no. She shook her head and whispered, it can't be true. You couldn't possibly be cheating on me. Right. You're my soulmate, please. I don't want to be alone. Small tears escaped her eyes and landed on the table. She felt like there were cracks in her heart. Chapter 153, Headmaster. A couple of days later. 25th floor of the dungeon. The tree that was as high as the sky swayed gently in the breeze, its branches reaching across the sky and casting a shadow over the entire floor. Its leaves were golden and shimmered like stars during the darkest night. At the land below, the tree's roots protruded out of the ground and stretched to the ends of the floor. It looked like those roots split the floor in 12 different sectors. At this very moment, inside the tree's enormous trunk, stairs spiraled upwards towards the top. There were hundreds of doors alongside the stairs, leading to different parts of the tree. At the end of the stairs, on the highest floor of the tree, there was a small room with a window that showed the entirety of the floor. The room was at such a high place that it was almost in the outer space. Currently, in the room, behind the desk, the headmaster of the Elder Tree Institute, Renard Marshall, was reading through a letter from a familiar name from the Crimson Hounds. Adam Palestar. Renard muttered to himself. Rancor. He removed his glasses from his nose, then pinched his glabella and put the glasses down on the desk. At that moment, his shoulders started shaking as if he were containing his laughter. His lips parted, and he leaned against his chair. With his mouth moving in laughing manner, it looked like he was laughing, but no sound came from his mouth. It was truly a strange sight to behold. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door, then the knob turned, and a scrawny-looking young man entered the room with a big bruise over his right eye. Terry, Renard shook his head. What happened now? I was studying in my room, then they broke through my door and beat me up, Terry explained in a shaky voice. Did you at least manage to fight back? Renard asked. Terry bit his lip and shook his head. There were many other bruises around his scrawny body, but he was hiding them under his baggy clothes. Do I need to send you to the culling chamber? Renard asked. Terry's face paled. Please, no. Then why did you come here? Renard asked. You want me to punish the ones that hurt you? You want others to fight the battles for you? Terry lowered his head and shook it. It was usually forbidden to fight outside the classes, so there was usually punishment for those who did. However, what Renard hated more than the rule breakers was the weak. It made him sick. You have a brilliant mind. Renard stood up, walked over to the young man, and patted his shoulder. You have a gift that many are jealous of, but you squander it away by being weak. What should I do? Terry asked. Whenever I want to fight back, my body freezes over. Renard smiled and whispered in his ear. The calling chamber. Please. Terry's eyes shook with tears falling. Anything else, please? Renard rolled his eyes and smiled. I ain't letting you do it by yourself, no need to worry. What? Terry looked into his eyes. With who? There's a new student coming in. Renard walked over to the desk and looked at the letter. A very special kind of student. A special student? Terry gulped. Who could it be? The headmaster rarely speaks so highly of someone. When he arrives, he'll do the calling chamber with you, no need to worry. Renard said. Meanwhile, you go and wait in your quarters till you're summoned. Please, mercy. Terry fell on his knees and begged. I'll do anything else. You're pissing me off. Renard said angrily and smacked his fist across Terry's face. Terry collapsed on the floor in a crumbled heap, bleeding from the nose and mouth. Renard stomped over him and broke a couple of bones. Terry's tears mixed up with his blood, and he tried to scream, but Renard covered his mouth and muffled the sound. SHH, don't cry now. Renard used his other hand to wipe away Terry's tears. Terry's eyes looked horrified. You're from a proud Kingston lineage, Renard said. Your family has high hopes for you. But if it so happens that I have to expel you, they wouldn't be happy with you. Terry's eyes widened in shock, and slowly, his tears stopped falling, and he stopped screaming. It was the only reason why he had stayed in the Elder Tree Institute for so long. He managed to deal with the bullying and constant abuse by just remembering what would happen if he quit or got expelled. Renard removed his hand from his mouth and stood up with a smile. I'll give you special permission to skip the classes. Renard said. After all, I want you to be in a tip-top shape for the calling. Terry climbed back to his feet, barely able to keep his balance. Renard turned around and returned to his desk. Then he put his glasses back on, waved his hand in a dismissal motion, and started writing a letter for Digby to accept the enrollment. Terry turned around and approached the door, then came to a stop and turned around to look at Renard. Excuse me. What? Renard asked, his tone impatient. What's his name? Terry asked. Whose? Renard frowned and looked away from the letter. Of the new student. Terry said and gulped. I want to know his name. Adam. Renard replied and turned his head down at the letter. He'll arrive in a couple of days. Adam. Terry whispered, curious about this new student. They were going to do the calling together, so there was already an invisible bond between them. After all, they had to work together or they wouldn't get anywhere there. I hope he is nice. Terry thought and opened the door. I hate everyone else here. A night fell over the dawn watch. Guards did their usual routine checkup on the Crimson Hounds and made sure all was secure. Before the darkness settled in, without them noticing, a shadow flew over the compound like a slithering snake and disappeared as soon as it appeared. Inside Amelia's room, she was sitting on her bed and scratching the back of her head. She was given a task by Valera, and that was to learn magic. However, she didn't know how to start learning it. She wasn't given any instructions except the ones in the scroll. Damn, how do they expect me to learn this? She gritted her teeth and bit her nail, looking very unfeminine. The window suddenly opened, and cool night air wafted inside. Amelia shuddered in cold and looked at the window that was suddenly open. She frowned, stood up, and went over to the window. As she opened the window, she peeked out and looked around to see anyone. She shrugged her shoulders and closed the window, but at that moment, from the reflection of the window, she saw a masked figure standing behind her. Before she could scream, the masked man wrapped his arm around her mouth and stabbed her through the back multiple times. She kept screaming and screaming, but everything came out muffled, and then everything went black for her. Chapter 154, Couple of Years. Adam speed-walked down the open hallways of the Crimson Hound's compound and soon arrived by the room that had door wide open with mercenaries walking in and out. As he stepped inside, he was immediately greeted by a flurry of activity and loud voices. By the window, a lifeless woman lay on the ground with dead-looking eyes and slowly turned transparent. It looked like she was about to disappear. Adam. Digby, after seeing him arrive, walked over to him with a serious look. What happened? Adam asked as he looked at Amelia's dead body. He wasn't sure how he should react to this. While he was inside his room, about to fall asleep, he was alerted up by a guard standing over him with a bright lantern. The guard told him to go here. He was shocked to hear that Amelia was found dead in her quarters with multiple stab wounds on her back. He was mildly annoyed. After all, his revenge would have to wait even longer, as he didn't want to kill her when she was weak with nothing to lose. I hate to say this, but we don't know, Digby said with an ugly expression. The window was slightly tempered with, so the assassin must have entered the room from that. Why would anyone kill her? Adam asked, looking angry. In Digby's eyes, it looked like he was just angry about his close friend dying, but that was far from the truth. He just didn't want anyone else to kill her and take away the satisfaction of doing it himself. We have a few theories, Digby said. Whoever killed her was very high rank since even I couldn't sense anyone come and go. Could it be Moonlit Guardians? Adam asked with a frown. She left them to join us. Unlikely, Digby said. Moonlit Guardians are not hostile kind, that's why they left the bustling of Dawnwatch to create their own community in their small village. They also don't have powerful members that can come here unseen. Valera said, entering the room as well. She saw that Amelia was dead and looked annoyed as well. This was a very troubling matter in many senses. However, what annoyed her most was that she gave her the magic scroll. It went to waste, as she immediately died after acquiring it. It looked like the assassin didn't leave any of her stuff behind either and just took all of them with him. It might be that the assassin killed her accidentally. Valera said. The assassin might have come here for someone else, like for you. An assassin that strong most likely wouldn't make such a rookie mistake. Digby said. I have another theory. It might be a warning. Warning. Yes, it's like the assassin is saying, we can kill you whenever we want to, but their reasoning for doing so remains mystery. It could also be as simple as Amelia angered someone powerful and joined Crimson Hounds to have protection. Adam listened to them and nodded. According to his memory, Amelia never made enemies out of anyone. From what he remembered, she was also never assassinated like now. Her early days in Mortal Online were very peaceful, as she stayed with the Moonlit Guardians until she met him. So, are Moonlit Guardians culprits for this? Unlikely, they didn't do anyone when she joined me, so why would they now? Digby looked at Adam with a deep look. This incident was proof of Crimson Hound's incapability of protecting him. The person dead on the ground could be Adam instead of Amelia. It was a chilling thought, as if that were the case, they would have no idea who did it, like now with Amelia. Adam, walk with me, Digby said as he left the scene of the crime and headed towards the central courtyard. Adam bowed to Valera, then followed after him, walking quickly behind him. During the short walk to the central courtyard, Digby didn't speak a word. Soon after, they arrived at the courtyard with a starry sky shining over them and the moon casting a soft glow on the ground. Why did you join Crimson Hounds? Digby asked. Hey! Adam looked at Digby confused. You told me that you didn't want to go to the Imperium City and that you joined us because of the protection my father and I can give you. That's right. Adam nodded, frowning. It does seem like I can't offer any protection. Digby said. I underestimated the threat you'll be facing. My father's status will protect us from the guild threats, but not from the threats that are coming from shadows. I have to agree that I didn't think I would garner so much attention from Imperium City. Adam thought to himself. However, Digby is forgetting that I am not Amelia. I would have not allowed myself to get assassinated like this. I've got many safety precautions in place. That's why. Digby turned to look at him and said, this place is not safe, so I was thinking about relocating from Dawnwatch to Ebon Reach. Ebon Reach. Adam looked surprised. The famed Wall City. My father's allies are located there. Digby said. It's where I believe this guild will be the safest. Why haven't you gone there before? Adam asked. I didn't want to rely on my father too much. Digby said and then sighed. But I must. My uncle is also living there, and I sent him a letter a while back. They've already arranged a place. For Crimson Hounds. I see, when are we leaving? Adam asked. He didn't mind going to the Ebon Reach. It wasn't as nice a place as Dawnwatch and was quite crude as it was a city right beside the wall. It was also the first place that would get destroyed if the Chaos Beings managed to break through the wall. However, it was a good place to grow strong quick. We are, not you. Digby said. Remember the Elder Tree Institute? You must go there, now. Was I accepted? Adam asked with a frown. I haven't gotten the official confirmation, but I don't think they'll reject you. What if I do? Adam asked. Then. Digby chuckled. You must have a few ideas of your own. Adam scratched his chin in a thought. It is on the 25th floor. Can I reach the institute by myself? You'll be fine as long you move during the day. Digby said. The night is when the boss of the floor comes out to play. We can't join you there because we would have to make a deal with the mercenary guild, etc. It would take several months to get clearance for me to go with you. Right, I understand. Adam nodded. He, obviously, knew all this, but he had to act ignorant to keep up appearances. He wasn't too worried to go alone, as just Digby said, daytime on that floor wasn't that dangerous. However, during the night, he knew that it was a different story. At earliest morning, start heading to the 25th floor. If you move quickly, you can arrive at the Elder Tree Institute before the night falls. All right. Adam said with a deep sigh and offered a handshake. I guess we'll see in a couple of years. Digby looked at the hand, then smiled and shook it. Yeah, in a couple of years. I am truly intrigued by just how strong you'll be by then. Chapter 155, Welcome. Thump, thump. A group of wagons and carriages rattled through a dirt road, leaving behind the bustling city of Dawnwatch. A sigil of crimson hounds adorned the side of each carriage and wagon. The mercenaries watched as the Dawnwatch hid behind the hills and disappeared from view. It was a place where they had spent countless years to make a name for themselves and for their guild. Now, they were leaving it behind. They were riding towards the unknown Ebon Reach. Some of these mercenaries had never visited it before but had heard countless tales about that place. It was the only place where one could leave to go beyond the wall, where chaos beings and wildlife first dwelled. It was the first line of defense against the dangers of the unknown. Most of them didn't want to leave Dawnwatch and their beautiful villa. They were already missing their rooms and the safety of the familiar. At the frontmost carriage, Nahus and other young recruits sat eagerly, chatting amongst themselves about Ebon Reach. So, Adam is going there. Hannah said out loud while looking out of the carriage window at the passing scenery. Oh, you're missing him already. A young woman beside her elbowed her playfully. Stop it! Hannah blushed in embarrassment and quickly looked away, but she couldn't hide her pink cheeks from her teasing friend. Elder Tree Institute. Nahs said with a deep sigh. I remember when I was there. You were on Elder Tree Institute? Alan asked in surprise. For one summer, Nahs said. Couple of years before I took my tutorial. I thought that only the elite could enter that place. Alan said in surprise. My family is rich, like mega rich. Nahs said. With good connections, they managed to apply me there. It was a very enlightening experience. How did it go? Alan asked in excitement. Others were equally curious. There's a reason why I only stayed for one summer. Nahs said, and absent-mindedly looked out of the window. That's as far as my talent could take me. You were kicked out? Alan asked in shock. It took all of them by surprise because even though Nahs couldn't be compared with Adam, he was still a very talented individual. They knew that Nahs had great success back in the real world as a track and field athlete, winning many national tournaments. His physical prowess and talent were clearly amazing, but even he couldn't survive in the Elder Tree Institute. It might look like a paradise from outside, but that place is the worst. Nahs said with a serious look. It's where dreams go to die, where the talented get broken and the weak get crushed. What happened to you there? Alan asked. Nahs had never spoken to them about the Elder Tree Institute before, and it was now clear why. It looked like he got some very deep scars there. There's a thing called the culling event there. If you undergo it, you'll get broken, and it's nearly impossible to put yourself back together. They all stayed quiet, gulping at the thought of it all. The worst person is that fucking headmaster. Nahs said with a scoff. He acts like a good-hearted man, but he's the one who created that hellhole in the first place. That place was different before he became the headmaster. Will Adam be all right? Hannah asked in worry. Who knows? Nahs shrugged his shoulders. With his talent, he'll go far as long as he doesn't break first. A few carriages away, Amelia was sitting by the window, looking at the passing scenery with hidden annoyance in her eyes. She was cursing Adam 1,000 times in her mind. He had now left somewhere else, leaving her alone with people who clearly didn't like her. And he didn't even have courtesy to ask whether she was all right. She was murdered and yet he didn't even send a text message. No wonder you're still single and virgin. Amelia scoffed. 21st floor. Crack, crack, crack. In the shadow-covered forests, a sound of cracking twigs echoed. It was still evening, but it looked like it was nearing night as the sun was hidden behind those enormous branches that blocked out the sky and cast long shadows across the forest floor. The birds chirped, and all sorts of animals ran hectically around in an underbush. They were all escaping to their own corners of the forest as they could feel the approaching night. Even the animals were afraid of the night. It was like a natural force was about to happen. By the elder tree's lower trunk, a pair of men stood in guard of a wooden door. It was the entrance to the Elder Tree Institute. The men noticed that the animals were escaping as the darkness of shadows started to spread further across the forest. We should go inside, Will Ebert said. We don't want to be here in the dark. Wait, Ilkin, standing beside him, said. It's still 10 minutes until closing time. We must be here in case. Fine, do it yourself, I am not risking my life just to be punctual, Will Ebert said and was about to open the door. He was then stopped by Ilkin, who grabbed his arm and whispered, You want Renard to know that you left early? He doesn't like those who don't follow the rules. TCH, asshole, Will Ebert shook off his hand but didn't dare to turn the knob. I am just saving your life, no need to thank me. Saving my life? As if. The night is about to come, and we're still outside. Just wait a couple more minutes, and then we leave. Crack. A loud crack sounded from the near forest. They drew their steel from scabbards in a haste and faced the dark forest where the noise originated. What was that? In that moment, a dark hooded figure stepped out between two trees and raised a hand in greeting. Hello. Who are you? The two men asked while not lowering their weapons. They then whispered between each other. All the students should be back by now. He doesn't look like a student. At that moment, the figure removed his hood and revealed his face to the two men. He didn't look too old and looked like an ordinary student from the institute. My name's Adam, and I am here to join the institute. Adam said with a smile. A new student. The two men exchanged frowns. Have you heard of someone new coming? Wait. Ilkin pulled out some of the papers and looked at the young man. Palestar? Are you Adam Palestar? They were expecting me. Adam looked surprised and nodded. That's me. The two men exchanged shocked gazes. They received a special order from Renard a day ago. If a person named Adam Palestar arrived, they should allow him to enter immediately and take him to the calling chamber. Do you have an ID? Rebirth asked. Wait. Ilkin said and looked at the sky. It's turning dark. The night is about to start. Damn it. Rebirth, scared to his wits, opened the door and shouted. You there, young man, come in. Adam looked at the dark sky, then followed the two men through the wooden door, which closed immediately after. They entered a small room with wooden walls, wooden furniture, a wooden floor, and a faint smell of smoke in the air. Ah, sorry about that, we don't want to be outside during the night. Ilkin said with a chuckle. And asked. Can we get your mercenary card, please? Adam nodded and gave him the card. The two men looked at the card and nodded. Well then, welcome to Elder Tree Institute, Adam Palestar. The end of the second volume. New World. Chapter 156, Worthless Genius. Third volume, Elder Tree Institute. Ilkin opened a door and took a hold of a lantern hanging by the door, then, with a flick of a switch, a small, gentle fire lit up inside the lantern. It gave enough light to cover the small room. The room was slightly bigger than a bathroom, with two small sofas pushed up against the walls. There was another door in the middle of the two sofas. It was closed. However, there was a sign on top of the door that read Calling Chamber, and its letters were made of timber. Please wait here. Ilkin said with a smile. Your partner will soon join you. Partner. Adam raised an eyebrow, nodded, and entered the small room, then took a seat by one of the sofas. Ilkin and Rebirth left, closing the door behind them. Elder Tree Institute, I have heard a great deal of stories of this place. Adam looked above the door at the lettered word. It made him frown. Calling Chamber. That doesn't sound nice. I've heard both good and bad things about this place. It's a very secretive place, but the public knows that it's a place where talented people go if they want to push their talent to the limits. It's definitely a good place to grow strong. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to experience it myself. I did take a test, which was quite boring, but this is the first time I've heard about this calling chamber. I wonder what it entails. While waiting, Adam quickly took out the auction window to see the current highest bidder. Before leaving for the Elder Tree Institute, he decided to put the dagger up for auction and see how much he could get for it. He came to the conclusion that he didn't want to rely too much on the dagger for his fights, as it would ruin his fighting style. For the short term, that dagger was life-saving, but it would just hinder him in the long run. He had many golden opportunities, some of them being weapons of very high rank. Some being higher than the legendary rank. When's the time, he would go seek them out and take them for himself. Therefore, he wasn't too worried about not having that good of weapons, but he still needed armor. That's why he put the dagger for sale to get enough shine coins to buy armor that was equal to that of crimson armor or even better. Creak, the door began to open. Finally. Adam removed the auction window from his eyes and looked over to the door. Who's this partner they were talking about? As soon as the door opened, Ilkin pushed a young man inside the room and closed the door. Then they both heard the door being locked with a loud click. It sounded like a key was turning in a lock. The young man was scrawny. There was a slight bruise over his eye. It looked like he had applied some makeup to cover it up. It was clear he was nervous, his eyes swimming all around the place, as if he was allergic to looking someone in the eye. Adam stood up and offered his hand. Name's Adam. Nice to meet you. A hand. He wants to shake hands. Terry gulped and hesitantly reached out to shake Adam's hand. Terry Kingston. Well then, Terry, are you a student here? Adam asked. Why yes, I am in my second year. Terry nodded and finally looked high enough to see his face. At first, he thought that Adam looked quite ordinary, but then he noticed that certain tint of navy blue in his eyes that made them stand out. He is carrying himself with such confidence. Terry gulped. I was wondering about this. Adam pointed at the sign on top of the door. Calling chamber, what is this? Terry paled and stammered, it's where the weak go to die. Hey! Adam frowned and was about to ask what he meant by that, but then the door opened. Eek! Terry backed away in terror. This time, it was the calling chamber's door that opened. Adam lifted his feet and stepped through the opening of the door. The room was white. That's it. It was empty, white and bright. However, strangely enough, there was some kind of die hanging by the ceiling, but instead of it having numbers, it had images that were constantly changing and shifting. Please, no Kurobites or deadlings, please. Terry prayed with his hands tightly clasped together. Kurobites, deadlings. Adam frowned and looked at him. Why did you say those names? Terry didn't answer and just kept praying to any god that would be listening. Terry, answer me. Adam grabbed him by the throat and pulled him close. Why did you say those names? Terry looked at the die with a shaky gaze. This is the culling. The weak are eliminated, and in this case, we're the ones getting culled. The die decides which monster they'll send to cull us. And you can get Kurobites and deadlings from that. Adam asked with his face also changing shades. In very rare cases. Terry said with a gulp. I've heard them appear a couple of times, and when they did, everyone in the culling died. Adam removed his hand from his collar and turned to the dice with a serious look. Of course they'll die. Kurobites and deadlings are only found on floors above 50. So, the die decides our fate. What a fucking joke. At that moment, the die started moving on its own, spinning up, down, and sideways, and continued doing so until it moved at such speeds that it was a blur of colors. Adam and Terry continued to stand still, looking at the moving die. At last, it came to a stop, and only the bottom half of the die was glowing. The image was that of a skeleton key, and the background looked like a cemetery on a foggy night. Singing skeletons! Terry exclaimed, looking scared. Whew! On the other hand, Adam breathed a sigh of relief. It was much easier to deal with. Singing skeletons were the boss minions of the 15th floor. At that moment, the place changed rapidly. It turned from that dull white, empty room to a cemetery covered in fog and gravestones. The ground below Adam's feet turned from solid to soft grass that seemed to pull him down into the earth. The gravestones had the names of every student that was once called. Oh God, they're coming! Terry paced back and forth in a panic. We'll need to run. But where? We can't leave this cemetery, and it's not like this place is big either. Calm down. Adam patted him on the shoulder, which caused him to jump in panic. Why? Are you so scared? We could have gotten much worse. It's still dangerous. Terry cried out. Singing skeletons is not something we can deal with. Aren't you a student of this school? Adam asked with a frown. Why yes. Then why are you so afraid? Adam asked. You're a genius, are you not? Terry lowered his head and shook it. I am worthless genius. I can't do anything right. Adam frowned and smacked him in the cheek with an open palm. Smack. Ah. Terry's eyes widened in shock, and he touched his stinging cheek. Why you slapped me? A worthless genius is still better than none at all. Adam said, feeling genuinely angry. Chapter 157, A Skeleton Key. You wouldn't understand. Terry said in anger and took a step away from Adam. In here, worthless genius is the bottom of the barrel, and I am sinking fast. So, they sent you here because you're worthless? Adam asked. To get you culled. Terry gritted his teeth and nodded. It ain't the first time. This is my third time in here. How've you survived so far? Adam asked. Terry laughed. With luck. Amazing luck. Explain it further, it looks like we still have time. Adam said, and sat on top of the tombstone, looking around the foggy cemetery. The skeletons aren't here yet. We should hide. Terry shouted. This culling lasts for 10 days. 10 fucking long days. Can we leave earlier if we kill all the singing skeletons? Adam asked. Terry looked at him like he was looking at a fool. Yes, but that's easier said than done. They're very strong, even if they aren't the strongest kind. You can hide, only after you've explained how you survived. Adam crossed his arms. Go on. I was lucky, all right. Terry shouted. In my first culling, I got the black locusts as the monsters and the arena was a big forest. So, I hid through the 10 days. What about the second culling? Adam looked at him. What happened there? I was again lucky. Terry scratched his hair. I got the easiest monsters possible, a group of rabbits. And the arena was a huge meadow. I just relaxed and enjoyed the view. That's indeed lucky. Adam said with a chuckle. Singing skeletons are loud as they are always singing and slow, so we can get through this culling if we just keep hiding and running. Terry said impatiently, hoping to get Adam to join him. Please, we still have time to find a place to hide. You know a lot about these monsters. Adam said, looking carefree. I am good at studying, that's it. Terry said. It's the only reason why I haven't been expelled yet. You said your name is Kingston, correct? Yes, so. Is your father Marcus Kingston, perhaps? Terry looked at him in surprise. You know my father? No? No, but I've heard about him. Marcus is one of the best archers in the New World. It has been said that he can hit a target from over a mile away with perfect accuracy. Yeah, he sure is awesome. Terry sighed and rubbed his eyes. Unfortunately, I didn't get his skill with the bow. I've got good eyes for details, but my aim has always been terrible. Don't fret over it, just try to find something you're good with. Adam jumped off the tombstone and walked to the center of the cemetery, but then came to a quick stop as soon as the fog cleared ahead of him. There was a strange hole at the center of the cemetery. It was shaped like a keyhole, but the key would have to be gigantic to fit it. Adam looked to the foggy sky and narrowed his eyes. Can we go hide now? Terry asked impatiently. The culling is about to start. Aish. Adam opened his inventory and brought out a box of strange cigar-looking objects. He lit one up, put it between his lips, and took a deep drag, causing a cloud of smoke to rise around him. After grabbing the cigar and taking it off his mouth, he turned to Terry and asked. Want some? What's that, a cigar? Terry asked. Aren't you too young for something like that? It ain't a cigar. Adam said. This is a roll of caraco. A roll of caraco. Terry leaned closer. I haven't heard about that before. It's a special item that can enhance your mental fortitude. Adam explained. Its side effect. is that it causes your health to lower for a couple of days. I am not too sure. Terry said. Will it cause cancer or something? Nah. Adam laughed. Want to have a taste? Terry bit his lip and shook his head. My mom wouldn't like me to smoke something like that. Why? It's perfectly healthy. Adam said. It's not any different than any other mortal online item. It sounds like there are some risks involved. Terry said. Like it makes me dumber. There is a risk, and I already said it. Your health will be lower. You are only coin feeder, right? Yes, Terry nodded. So your health is already low, so this will be even more dangerous to be used by you, but tell me this, do you want to get rid of your fear? This can do that? Terry asked, looking at the roll of Carico. It can. Adam said and handed over the roll to Terry. It'll make you clear-headed. Terry hesitated for a moment but then put the roll between his lips and inhaled deeply. He instantly started coughing uncontrollably, regretting his decision. Adam just laughed beside him. I was just fucking with you. There aren't any special powers in that thing. You think it is that easy to get rid of fear? Haha. What? Terry coughed out loud with tears brimming at the corners of his eyes. You lied to me? Then what was that thing? Its name is a roll of Carico, but instead of it doing something, it does absolutely nothing. Adam laughed. It's basically just a normal cigarette without the cancer part. Ah, you bastard! Terry shouted, and then a few laughs escaped his mouths. That tasted like shit. It indeed does. Adam replied with a smirk and stored the box back in his inventory. How are you feeling now? What do you mean? Terry asked, still trying to cough the rest of the smoke from his lungs. Are you still afraid? Adam asked with a smile. Terry looked at him and noticed something strange. He didn't feel scared anymore. That actually worked? What? No, haha. Adam shook his head. The fear is a fickle thing. All you needed was a distraction. Oh. Terry looked at him in amazement. That prank caused me to totally forget about the calling. He is amazing. Now, listen. Adam wrapped his arm around his shoulder. We're not going to hide or run. That's some pussy shit. Instead, we're going to kill those skeletons. How? Terry asked. Are you a good runner? Adam asked. Why yeah, I think so. Terry nodded. Fine, the plan is this. Adam whispered in his ear. Terry's face paled after hearing all of it. You're crazy. If we do it correctly, we can return by the time the bell rings for the morning classes. Adam said, smiling. Ah. Terry sighed and nodded nervously. All right, I'll do my best. Good. Adam patted him on the shoulder and looked at the foggy sky. It looks like it is about to start. A key made out of skeleton parts fell from the sky, stabbed through the cloud layers, through the fog, and landed at the keyhole in the middle of the cemetery. The ground shook. Click. With a loud click, the key turned 90 degrees, and strange music began to play from the depths of the earth. It sounded like there was a music box buried in the ground. At that moment, skeletons, one after another, rose from the ground, and their mouths clicked together in a musical harmony. Chapter 158, Singing Skeletons. Click, click. A sound of clicking reverberated throughout the foggy cemetery. It soon started sounding like a lyricless song, haunting and eerie in its melody. So, this is the famous skeleton song. Terry said with a gulp. The skeletons rose from the soil, their teeth chattering. As soon as they stepped into the fog, the mist clung to their bones like a ghostly shroud, and after stepping out of the foggy veil, they took a hold of rusty swords and rusted shields. Shit. Terry backed off in fear after seeing that the skeletons were clearly approaching them. "All right." Then, Adam patted him on the shoulder and said, "You know about the way of the aggro, right?" "Aggro?" Terry looked at him and nodded nervously. "Yes, the simple-minded chaos beings have aggression mechanics. The tank's job is to keep their attention focused on them, while the DPS takes them down one by one. That's your job," Adam said. "Attract their aggro, and bring them there." He pointed to the only building-like structure in the cemetery. It was rock-made and looked like a tomb. "Inside?" Terry asked, and Adam nodded. "Won't I be trapped there?" "I'll handle that. I'll be waiting for you inside." As Adam started running towards that tomb-like building, Terry shouted, "How do I garner their aggro? Aren't you a good student?" Adam shouted while running away. "What do the singing skeletons hate the most?" "What do they hate the most?" Terry licked his dry lips and looked at the skeletons that weren't that far away from him anymore. He then cleared his throat, trying to appear calm despite the fear rising in him. "Why you're..." Terry took a deep breath and then opened his mouth wide. "Your song sucks." The words came out as a strong shout, and all the skeletons heard it. The clicking of their teeth halted for a moment as they turned to stare at Terry with their hollow eye sockets. They didn't have eyes, but Terry could feel their rageful stares piercing into his soul like knives. At that moment, the singing skeletons started running towards him, their bony fingers wrapped around the hilts of their rusty swords. The clicking of their teeth returned, and this time, the music was with a faster tempo, intensifying the sense of impending doom. "Oh, shit!" Terry turned and started running as fast as his legs could carry him, desperately trying to escape the skeletal horde. He was indeed much faster than the skeletons, and even had to slow down his pace, otherwise, the aggro on the singing skeletons would lessen and they would stop chasing him. Terry was able to stay very clear-minded, and even though he didn't have any experience as tank, his talent was his intelligence, and he immediately knew what he needed to do. However, he was still worried about the rest of Adam's plan. They would get stuck inside the rock structure as there was only one entrance and exit. Whatever, he must have some kind of plan. "Come on, follow me, you shitty singers!" Terry continued shouting, slowly backing off into the stone structure. The skeleton horde walked up a small hill, then arrived at the entrance of the tomb and stepped through one by one. It was narrow entrance, so they couldn't enter all at once. Terry looked inside the tomb and saw dusty coffins lined up against the walls. The coffins appeared to be centuries old, untouched and undisturbed. At that moment, he saw Adam sitting on top of a coffin at the end of the tomb, and joined him by his side, nervously gazing towards the skeletons. What now?" Terry asked. "You did good," Adam said with a smile. "You attracted their aggro like a master." Terry scratched the back of his head with a sheepish smile. "It was pretty easy, but I am sure there are monsters that are not as easy." "Yet," Adam chuckled. "The intelligent chaos beings are pain in the ass, but even they are vulnerable to the aggro. You just need to know what buttons to press." "I see," Terry whispered and felt surprisingly ecstatic. It felt amazing to control this skeleton horde, like he was a puppet master. It was the first time in his life that he did truly something amazing, and he was proud of himself. "What do we do now?" he asked as the skeletons stepped through the entrance and gulped. "We're very trapped here. That's the thing with these environments, they're your ally." Adam looked up at the flimsy ceiling. It was all cracks, dust, and spider webs. Adam reached out his hand towards the ceiling and said, "Pull." The ceiling started shaking weakly. Nothing really happened. The skeletons have mostly entered the tomb and were approaching the two men. They were only 5 meters separated. "Adam!" Terry gulped. "Hurry!" "Damn!" Adam gritted his teeth, and sweat rolled down his forehead. "Pull!" He focused his pull on a small stone slab at the ceiling that seemed to be looser than others. The dust fell out of the ceiling's cracks, and suddenly the slab gave way. Crash! The ceiling fell apart and crashed over the skeletons, burying them under piles of debris. You killed 2x singing skeletons. 220 XP acquired. XP, 1947/2500. Why you did it? Terry laughed happily. That's amazing, Adam. Whew. Adam breathed heavily, but then said. It isn't over. Hey! There were singing skeletons left outside who didn't enter the tomb. Adam couldn't afford to wait for them to enter, as the tomb seemed full enough, and if he waited too long, the skeletons would have reached them and killed them. What do we do now? Terry asked urgently. Fight. Adam grabbed Terry by his arm and pulled him out of the crumbled ceiling that was now their only exit. They arrived at the only remaining part of the roof that was still intact. They looked around and saw around 10 skeletons surrounding them. So many left. Terry's expression looked ugly, but then he saw Adam pick up his sword and shield. You're really going to fight them? Yes, it's much more doable to fight 10 skeletons than over 30. Adam said. What will I do then? Terry asked. Attract their aggro again. You already did great, but leave the rest to me. Hey! At that moment, Terry watched as Adam suddenly leaped into the air and started falling towards the skeleton horde, who were staring at him with their hollow eyes, their rusty swords pointing upward. He is crazy! Terry cried out in horror. Adam suddenly put his shield in front of his body while he was falling and shouted. Shield! Charge! The shield went through the rusty swords and the skeletons below, then slammed against the ground. The ground shook, and all the skeletons stumbled away with a loss of balance. You killed 2x singing skeletons. 20 XP acquired. XP, 1967/2500. 8. Terry whispered. Adam swung his sword in a wide arc and slayed another couple of skeletons. You killed 3x singing skeletons. 30 XP acquired. XP, 1997/2500. 5. Terry's eyes widened in shock as he couldn't believe what was happening. Adam pointed his hand at one of the skeletons and shouted. Pull! The skeleton started floating above the ground and slowly floated in the direction of the young man, and at that moment, Adam sliced through the air with his sword, cutting the skeleton in half. You killed a singing skeleton. 10 XP acquired. XP, 2007/2500. 4. Chapter 159, Mr. Caretaker. The last remaining singing skeletons rushed Adam from the fourth. They didn't have any plan in the mind except to keep swinging their rusty swords and sing with their clicking teeth. Adam parried their flimsy swords and then used shield charge to push them all away. While the singing skeletons were in disarray, Adam rushed in and cut through them like a hot knife through butter. They couldn't handle the rush and fell apart one after another. Soon, the last remaining singing skeletons were in a heap of destroyed bones, and the singing slowly ceased to exist. You killed 4x singing skeletons. 40 XP acquired. XP, 2047/2500. You did it! Terry jumped off the roof and cheered in relief. Oh God, we actually survived! Adam sheathed his sword and put his shield on his back, then looked at the destroyed skeletons scattered across the ground. Then the skeletons vanished into thin air, and the soft ground turned to solid. The cemetery vanished from the sight, and they found themselves standing back at the white room with the eerie die hanging by the ceiling from invisible chains. Terry sat on the ground and felt like crying. He didn't think he would actually survive the third time, but again, he was very lucky to not be there alone. Maybe my talent is my immense luck. Terry thought with a wry smile. A door opened at the end of the white room. It clearly wasn't the same door that they took to enter this place, thus, it must lead somewhere else. Ah, let's go. Terry stood up with a smile. Where is the door leading? Adam asked and followed him as they left the white room and entered a hallway with walls, floors, and a ceiling made out of timber. It looked like they were walking down a tree trunk. We're heading to the Elder Tree Institute, you're about to see something amazing. Terry said with a smile, then arrived at the end of the hallway and opened the door there that was circular shaped. As soon as they stepped through the opening of the door, Adam's jaw almost dropped to the ground. They walked absent-mindedly to the center of one huge floor and looked straight up, seeing a spiraling staircase leading up the tree for seemingly eternity. Adam believed that if he had wings, he could just fly up and reach the ceiling of this tree without any trouble. However, without wings, those stairs seemed to be the only way to get to the top. At this moment, it was very quiet, and there wasn't anyone on this floor or at the stairs. It's silent hour. Terry said. After 12 a.m., everyone is supposed to be in their rooms and be all hush-hush, or there will be a punishment. Then are we breaking rules now? Adam asked. No, the same rules don't apply to us now because we just left the culling. Terry said. Oh. Adam touched his chin and wondered. Where is my room, then? Where am I supposed to go? Terry shrugged his shoulders. I don't know either. I know. Terry and Adam looked behind in surprise and saw the person who just spoke. It was a person with moles all around his face, and he had disfigurement on one side of his face that made it look like his face was swelling up. He was short, 3 heads shorter than Adam, at least, and he was always hunched over like his spine was permanently bent. I am the caretaker of his establishment, you can call me Mr. Caretaker. Mr. Caretaker said with a sly grin, revealing his yellow, crooked teeth. Terry gulped and shuddered, then whispered to Adam. Be careful around this guy, he gives me the creeps. It's rude to whisper in front of someone, or is there something you want to hide from me? Mr. Caretaker said. Did you suddenly lose all your respect in the past hour, Terry Kingston? No. Terry shook his head. I am sorry. Humph. Mr. Caretaker clearly didn't like him and then turned to Adam. I'll apologize on behalf of the headmaster, he didn't expect you to be able to clear the culling today, so he has already retreated to his bed. That's fine. Adam said and asked. Do you perhaps know where I'll be sleeping? Yes. Mr. Caretaker said and looked at Terry with an annoyed look. You two are roommates, so he'll know. Terry's eyes widened in surprise, and then he smiled. Nice. Everyone in this facility is living in pairs, so you'll have a roommate. Mr. Caretaker said. I see. Adam nodded, not minding at all. The silent hour has already begun, so go in your rooms, he said. At morning, I'll come pick you up for your first classes. Adam nodded again, and as the hunched man left, he followed Terry up the stairs, who couldn't stop from closing his mouth. Since we are roommates, we're also in the same class. Terry said with a smile. He had hated his class in the past, but now he was looking forward to it as he was finally not alone. Adam was listening to him, but most of his focus was on the surroundings. He was holding the railing, and while walking up the stairs, he looked up and down from over the railing to get a look at everything. All the doors by the stairs were closed and locked as they were locked as soon as the silent hour began. We have everything here. Terry said. Libraries, restaurants, hot springs, saunas, and even a viewing platform where you can see the entirety of the 25th floor. It's wicked. This place sure is amazing. Adam said. It seems like a paradise, but then there is a thing like that, culling. How would you describe this place? Terry sadly smiled and said. I've heard stories about the former Elder Tree Institute. Apparently it was actual paradise, but everything changed since Renard took charge. Apparently he is one of the leaders of Pro Strong movement. Oh. Adam replied, realizing the gravity of the situation. I've heard about them. Yet. Terry sighed. He cares about strength and intelligence. Since I am intelligent, I haven't been expelled, but he cares about strength more and I am starting to get the gist of it. Adam sighed. It's not all that bad. Terry said, a slight lie in his tone. For him, the Elder Tree Institute had been the worst experience in his life by far. It was because he had to deal with constant bullying and abuse. However, he believed that Adam would do great in here, as he was a strong and clearly very talented individual. Ah, here we are. Terry and Adam came across a door, then with a key, he opened the door and entered. There were hallways with stairs at the end leading to another floor of this place. Terry's voice turned to a whisper. All the students of Class E are living here. Adam nodded. They then walked to the end of the hallway, and instead of walking up the stairs, Terry opened a door at the leftmost end of the hallway and entered the room with Adam. The room was dimly lit, with only a small lamp in the corner providing light. It was quiet and cozy. It also wasn't too small. There were 2 bedrooms, a living room, a very small kitchen, and a small bathroom. This is my room. Terry pointed at the left door and then pointed at the door right next to it. You can use that room. It already has a bed with sheets, so there's not much you have to do. There. It's nice. Adam said with a smile. You should go to sleep. Terry said and opened the door to his room. The class is very early. So you should get some rest. Okay. Adam nodded and felt the shift in Terry's emotions. Whenever he mentioned the class, he turned sad and clearly hated going to it. I'll see you in the morning. Adam said. Terry smiled and nodded, then closed the door. Chapter 160, Floor Orb. The first light of the morning shone over the elder tree, causing several howls and screams to come from the forests. While the darkness began to disappear, the strange monsters in the forests started to retreat back to their caves and hidden lairs, almost like they were allergic to the sunlight. Elder Tree Institute also woke up, doors banging open as the staff members of the facility stumbled out of their quarters and started their day. At the dormitory for the students, the doors stayed closed and the light was dim there. Most of the students were still sleeping as it was 2 hours before their classes started. However, there were a few early risers who left the dormitory to do either their running routine or to grab breakfast before the cafeteria got too crowded. Inside a room, Adam pushed himself up and down in a series of push-ups, the sweat glistening against his relatively pale skin. Arg! Adam grunted as he strained to finish his set. Then, after doing the last push-up, he stood up and suddenly formed fists with his hands, then started shadowboxing against empty air in front of him. Swish, swish, swish. Before he could finish his shadowboxing set, the door opened, and a hunched man slowly walked in, holding a cane to assist him in walking. Young Adam, if you don't mind, can you follow me? Mr. Caretaker said. Adam stopped throwing punches, nodded while breathing heavily, then used a towel to wipe his sweat and then put a t-shirt on. I didn't hear him come in. I didn't even hear the door being unlocked. Adam thought to himself. He thought it was because he was so focused on his own training that he didn't even notice. They headed out of the room, and Adam thought he would meet other students already, but every other door was still closed and the dormitory seemed empty. After leaving the dormitory behind, they started walking up the spiraling stairs, and this time, Adam was the place being more alive as staff members were bustling around. As the Mr. Caretaker and Adam walked past several staff members, their gazes lingered in Adam's direction for a beat longer than usual. It's him. A female staff member said to her friend and pulled out a piece of paper. The paper had a picture drawn, and it was shockingly accurate compared to the real one. Ranker. While Adam couldn't hear their whispers, he could feel the stares stabbing into the back of his head like 1,000 tiny needles. How far are we walking? Adam wondered as they just kept walking longer and longer up the spiraling stairs. Strangely enough, he didn't even have to slow down his walking pace, as Mr. Caretaker's pace was surprisingly good. It didn't matter that he was walking with a cane and had hunched back, looking like he wouldn't be able to move, let alone walk at the same pace as Adam. Adam tested a theory and picked up his pace slightly. His feet started moving faster and faster. Still, Mr. Caretaker stayed ahead of him, and his legs didn't seem to move any quicker either. It was as if he was effortlessly gliding along the steps of the stairs. Hat. Adam smirked. Interesting. Since it looked like Mr. Caretaker could keep up with any pace of his, Adam kept his pace relatively quick so they would arrive at their destination quicker. However, they walked another hour, yet it didn't look like they were halfway up the tree. It would probably take me 3 days to reach the top. Adam thought as he looked up towards the top. Where exactly are we heading to? Ah, here we are. Mr. Caretaker suddenly said and just entered one of the random doors that lined the stairs. Adam, in surprise, followed after him and headed deep into the hallway that had one door left at the end. With the master key, Mr. Caretaker opened the door, and instead of room, there was just a shelf of glowing orbs. Here. Mr. Caretaker took one and tossed it over to Adam. Don't drop it. Adam caught it with ease and looked at it with a raised eyebrow. What's this? You must be wondering, oh, this place is huge. Mr. Caretaker said. This, in your hand, is floor orb. I knew that already. Adam thought while acting ignorant. Floor orbs are found on every floor and can only be used on a floor they're found on. They allow teleportation. No wonder, it would take days to move around this place without it. Mr. Caretaker took out his own floor orb from his back pocket and said, "The headmaster office." Repeat those words. As soon as he said that, the orb sucked him inside like a vacuum cleaner, and he disappeared from sight. The headmaster office. Adam repeated those words, and the same thing happened to him. He got sucked inside the orb. While inside the orb, he was spinning uncontrollably, and he felt like he was traveling through time and space. Anyone with a weak stomach would have likely thrown up, and first-time users of the orb always throw up or pass out. After a while, Adam got thrown out of the orb, and he appeared at the top floor of the tree, standing by the door of the headmaster's office. It was closed tight. Arg! Adam touched his stomach and looked like he was about to throw up. Yep, my body isn't accustomed to that. If you throw up, do it over the railing. Mr. Caretaker said and pointed at the stairs with railings. If he threw up the railing, the vomit would travel straight down to the bottom floor and could make someone's day 1,000 times worse. Nah, I am fine. Adam said, took a few deep breaths, and seemed to be feeling better. The headmaster doesn't like things that are dirty. Mr. Caretaker said. He would not be happy if you dirted the doorstep of his office. I understand, I am feeling better. Adam said with a weak smile. He was slightly paler than usual, but the color slowly returned to his face. Good. Mr. Caretaker said and knocked on the door. Enter. A voice came from inside. Mr. Caretaker opened the door, and stayed outside, not planning to enter the room. Instead, he was motioning for Adam to enter it instead. Adam nodded and stepped through the door into the cozy-looking office, ornate with a large mahogany desk in the center. This was his first time seeing Renard, a stern-looking man with hazel brown hair and scary fingers formed into a steeple as he observed Adam. Please, take a seat. Renard's mouth formed a smile, somewhat. Adam bowed and took a seat on the other side of the mahogany desk. He couldn't help but look out of the window that was behind Renard and saw the clouds forming below the window and stretching out into the distance. It was a spectacular sight. Adam Palestar, isn't that right? Renard put on glasses and read through some papers. Correct. Adam nodded. honestly, didn't expect to see you that soon. Renard said. I thought it would take longer. In the culling. Renard paused for a moment before continuing, but I suppose congratulations are in order. For passing the test so quickly. Thank you. Adam nodded. I couldn't do it without Terry, he was of good help. No need to lie to me. Renard said. He cried to you about probably being expelled, didn't he? You're a strong one, Adam, don't let these weaklings bring you down while you try to help them. Adam hid his frown, but he wasn't pleased with his words. Pro-strong, indeed.